We're back with Kim Rich, who has, for those of us following the story, become known as the 65,000 fake students professor, who has been talking about this for a while. But Kim, I'm glad to have you back on because it sounds like, despite the fact that you've been talking about this in some pretty big platforms, that not much has changed. The school system has not necessarily done much to address it. I'm going to have you really fast just run us through, for people who are kind of picking up on this for the first time. Uh, Give us the Reader's Digest version of what happened, but just want to real fast read a quick part of Adam's article here, that hackers enroll the fake students and collect up to 900 million in financial aid and COVID-19 aid each semester, according to you. But however, no one seems to know for sure the sheer scale of the fraud. These fake students, usually created by bots, open new accounts using easy to spot fake names like Barack Obama, Donald Trump, or duplicate first names: Clifford, Jordan, Sydney, names with question marks or names with numbers. And he has a screenshot here. Um, and it says that you recently saw 1,000 new student IDs issued under 5 days, and 386 were obviously fake as duplicated names. There were probably many more that were fake, you said. Uh, the average student in the junior college system gets $5,000 in federal grants. So it seems like this is a money game. I, I, I guess let's go back to the first question. Walk us through again how somebody like you, what you were doing, where you are, and how you come across this.
So back in the summer, noticed some unusual activity in some of my classes. And mainly there were a group of students that were submitting the same exact work. And it wasn't just limited to like written assignments. It was even discussions where you're supposed to come up with your own opinion and your own ideas. And it would be very unusual for, more than one person to have almost the identical wording in a discussion. So when I started to look a little further, found that the same person, who was not even a person enrolled in my course, was actually completing the work for this handful of students. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. I started trying to see what the connections would be, because usually it's one or two students that are, cheating together. And this, what I eventually saw was that about a third of my class were likely fake students. They had a lot of things in common. They had very closely sequential ID numbers, which is unheard of. And they were all anthropology majors, and they were all freshmen. And so I just started looking at rosters and connecting dots, and lo and behold, these ended up being fake students. And this was right before the time that LA Times broke the article back at the end of August. So I knew that what I had seen was what LA Times then reported, which was, the 65,000 students who applied for financial aid.
Is that this article?
Yes, if that's the August 31st article. There were two right in succession. There was an August 31st article, and then a September 3rd or 1st article.
Okay.
Again, from LA Times.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it snowballed, and realized that our classes were basically full of these fake students. Many criminal organizations. I have no idea who's behind it. They obviously were able to get into the system, which I now know is likely starting at what's called CCC Apply. So that is run by the California State Chancellor's Office for Community Colleges. And basically it's a one-stop shop where any student can apply to any of the 116 community colleges in California with just one application on one system. And so that really is the key to where I believe, again, I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but where I believe the issue begins with and has continued to allow these criminals and criminal organizations into the system as a start. And so the state chancellor's office requested that the community colleges in California, I wouldn't say it was a demand, but they said they were to basically identify these 4 criteria that the state chancellor's office requested, was clearly defined, and they wanted all the community colleges to upload this data, all reference application fraud, enrollment fraud, financial aid fraud. Supposed to upload it monthly to the state chancellor so that they could kind of track this. And more recently in March, LA Times, again, they were able to get the data, and more than 40% of the colleges in the state never reported the data one time that since it was requested to begin, I believe it was back in September. And that includes my district as well, which we have 9 colleges. They did not report anything to the chancellor's office.
If you're waiting for somebody to investigate fraud at your school, one great way to pass the time is going to AllisonWinePromo.com. That's Allison with 1L winepromo.com, and get 50% off of my favorite Malbecs from Argentina and 50% off shipping. You get 2 wines from almost 9,000 feet. So these are extreme altitude wines. They have a very unique, robust flavor because of how remote and how high the elevation is. There's also 1 bottle from the oldest vineyard in Argentina, another one that uses natural fermentation. These are not wines that you're going to get at a grocery store. They make for great gifts. So go to AllisonWinePromo.com, or maybe you need a hot cup of coffee, in which case you can go to TwinEngineCoffee.com/Allison, TwinEngineCoffee.com/Allison, and pick from a wide variety of high altitude USDA certified Nicaraguan roasts. There's light roast, there's dark roast. There's also a limited black edition, which is processed with honey. Check that out. It's got a smoother, sweeter finish to it, not the bitter aftertaste that sometimes comes with other roasts. Or you can check out the Caturra tea. Caturra tea is the tea that you make from coffee fruit. So if you're a tea drinker, you can still support my work. Anyway, wherever you are, whatever you're investigating, have a sip of AllisonWinePromo.com or TwinEngineCoffee.com/Allison. Support my work while you're at it, and let's continue on with the video. This came out right after that article, Feds Alert Colleges Nationwide to Financial Aid Scam Under Investigation at California Community Colleges. So it's not like it doesn't seem like this is a secret at all anymore. The U.S. Department of Education is working with law enforcement partners and post-secondary institutions to stop the suspected financial aid fraud, Federal Student Aid Chief Operating Officer Richard Cordray said in a statement. Financial aid administrators at thousands of institutions across the country have been notified to take action. He said the law enforcement agencies were not identified. And it's so he's talking about this happening nationwide too. So not even just at California community colleges. So is it just, I mean, when they say like they're investigating, is that just a bunch of hooey? I mean, is that what, I'm not that you necessarily even know the answer to that, nor would I know the answer to exactly what they're going, because they always just say it's under investigation, so we can't comment. So, and then you can't even public records request it or anything. But I'm just curious, did it just die off? I mean, why no action on it? At least from your perspective.
I don't necessarily think it's dying off. I do know that the Department of Education Office of Inspector General's office does have an ongoing investigation, at least as of a few months ago. Last I spoke, I have not received a lot of cooperation from, I'll call them any ABC agency, federal or local, trying to investigate this. I think the amount of information and data I have is pretty damning in the sense that it really shows community college administrators, specifically my community college district, are perfectly aware of what's going on, and they really have not done what is needed to stop it or even at least slow it down. And it really comes all down to, authentication of students. That is, a job of the college. They need to ensure that the students that are coming into our classes are true, real students who we can actually teach and educate. Part of our job description is not teaching fake students. And so they are failing on that miserably. And even this semester, I have 2 late start classes, which basically start the second half of the semester, the last 8 weeks. And I have fake students in those classes, obviously, which I have now dropped and excluded from the course. But it just shows that this has not stopped. And the criminals who are doing this, they're just going to adapt to whatever we find out. So they adapt to, whatever is needed to continue to do it. And they wouldn't be doing it if there wasn't a gain for them. They would have just stopped. So they're obviously still making money from financial aid fraud. And so they're going to continue to do it until they're prevented from doing it.
But didn't you say that the universities are supposed to be handing over some kind of information and they're not? Or did I
Yeah.
mishear you?
No, so the California Community College Chancellor's Office requested all the colleges to report monthly on the data. It's 4 different criteria. It's basically the number of suspected fraud, how much money they've identified. It has no personal information, no student identifying information in it whatsoever, yet they want to keep this data secret and not release it. They say that it's pertinent to the investigation, therefore it can't be released. But it's just numbers. That's all it really is. So there's no identifying information in it whatsoever.
Okay, but in your perspective, that's not necessarily holding anything up?
Well, I mean, so what? So whether they report it or not, what are we doing about it? It doesn't matter if they report it, and the data is only good as to who's putting the numbers in. So
Yeah.
if there's a motive not to provide accurate data, unless you have a person who is reviewing all that data, let's say in a big investigation, then you have no idea if the data that you are receiving is accurate. I mean, it could be skewed 50%, 10%, or it could be absolutely 100% accurate. And there are colleges in the state who are definitely have jumped on this from their side, which is what our district should be doing, but it does not appear that they are doing much to prevent it from occurring.
In my experience, when the government really wants its money or it wants to do something, it figures out a way to get it done. And then if it's something that for whatever reason is low priority, they're amazing procrastinators. Excuse me, amazing procrastinators. Uh, and they could give you a million different reasons. Oh, we're too busy or whatever. But I used to work in government, so I saw behind the scenes how things can mobilize very quickly if there is a very serious need perceived among staff that something needs to get done versus however they decide something may not be high priority. In your opinion, do you feel like this is not a high priority or it's not being prioritized where it should be? Or not. Maybe you think it's just there's just a lot to do. But if you do think the former, why? Would there be an incentive or some bias leaning in the direction of just kind of figuring it out as time goes on and not necessarily turning up the heat?
Well, from my perspective, and definitely not from the perspective of whoever designed the CCC Apply system, who is running it, I realize it's a much bigger picture than me, one professor at one community college in the state of California. I understand that. However, from a common, maybe uncommon sense, we should call it perspective, you go to the root of the problem, and it appears for the most part that CCC Apply is the main entry point. I mean, there's YouTube videos on how to basically put in a fake script or fake algorithm into CCC Apply so they could just generate tons and tons of fake students. So my thing would be close CCC Apply. Shut it down until you find an expert in coding or web design, cybersecurity, whatever it is, to figure out where the issue is coming from and fix it. All they're doing is putting these temporary little band-aids on, and we're into a year later, at least that we're aware of, and possibly even longer, that the system has basically been broken. So it's basically, like, I guess you could say if your door has a hinge, that's faulty, and some bad guy comes in and breaks down your door, do you just put the door closed again and leave the faulty hinge? No, you fix the hinge and you lock the door. And if somebody still comes in, you might end up blocking off the door completely so that people aren't coming into your home. But yet they're not doing that in the system because I'll just give you an example. So I have some data for you, which is kind of mind-boggling in my opinion. So, for fall of 2021, I went to the California Community College State Chancellor's Office to look at the enrollment. And I took just 10% of that enrollment, which I believe would be realistically fake students. I think it's much higher than that based on the students in my classes, based on the fake students on the rosters that I've seen, but I'm going to go super, super conservative. So that's about 135,000 students. Okay. And this is enrollment. This isn't student ID numbers being issued or applications received. This was actual enrollment in a course in the community college system. And if you multiply that by the average amount of financial aid, and this is federal, state, local, of $5,000, you're looking at, remember, one semester only, fall 2021, $675 million.
Wow.
In one semester. And again, low end conservative estimate based on enrollment numbers from the state chancellor's office. So that's what's really pushing me in trying to keep this story alive, because it's not slowing down, it's not stopping, and it's not just a money issue, it's an authentication issue. They're allowing basically criminals into our classes now that have access to my data, any professor's data, and any other student's data. And so that's a security issue also. So, it's all about the money, in my opinion. It's about enrollment and numbers. The more enrollment, the more funding. And, California Community College District as a whole, the system, they don't want to lose funding. They're getting funding from the state, they're getting funding from the federal government, and it just trickles down from there. So there's really no incentive to remove the fake students. Yeah. Because until they get caught and are held accountable, they are only gaining funding and gaining enrollment numbers. Mm-hmm. They're not losing.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to like your broken house product analogy, I remember when our shower towel hanger was broken, and I just was like throwing the towel over the shower door because, the thing on the wall was broken, and it really didn't cost a whole lot of time and energy to just do that. So it took forever to finally like harness the energy to get that stupid hanger fixed, because it was like there was a very low cost. I mean, there wasn't really a benefit to it, but it was very low cost, right? But when something breaks, like if the heat broke in the middle of the winter, you better believe that like we would figure out in the next few hours, or like my internet went down this morning right before we were start to talk. Like if it's high priority, you figure it out fast because it's high cost, but if there's a low cost to it and maybe even a benefit, I think that's kind of human nature. And, if you have a bunch of people who are like, it's that guy's responsibility or that lady's, or I don't know, whatever. And like, what's the real cost here? Nothing, because we're getting tons of extra money. I don't know. I could see how that slips through the cracks. I mean, other people, we call it fraud, but they would go, we're getting to it. So, okay, I want to just switch you over to my locals community, AllisonMorrow.locals.com, where you can put questions in ahead of time for people like Kim. So go to AllisonMorrow.locals.com and sign up to be part of my editorial board. One of the first questions: isn't this fraud on a massive scale, and why are criminal investigators involved in identifying and recovering funds and exposing and prosecuting the thieves? I don't know if that was supposed to be are or aren't. The administrators that were informed and failed to make adjustments, isn't that malfeasance, and why are they still employed? The teachers that knew or should have known and continued to allow and abetted the scam should also be held liable for the cost, shouldn't they? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, yes to everything. And that's kind of my push for this. You can't say you didn't know about this now. This has been in the media. The district, mine, LA Community College District, their PR person basically said in one of the last articles that he or the district didn't even know if bots are real. And I mean, that's just such a laughable statement because there's been tons of memos and tons of information out there that, okay, well, a bot is not a real person. If maybe we're doing a play on words, he's correct. Bots are not real. But guess what? Bots in the community college system in California are real, and it's occurring. And they are stealing federal, state, local financial aid. And our administrators know about it. Yes, they should be held liable. In terms of professors, not everybody has the experience to identify fake students in their courses. And we wouldn't want professors to needlessly be dropping even a ton of real students. So I'm not so sure in the sense that professors should be held liable, and I'm not leaving that as an excuse by any means, not to hold them accountable if they do know. But the key is, it is the duty and the responsibility of the college to authenticate who is coming into our class, and they are not doing that. That's where the buck stops, is right there.
And there are people that are assigned to that. I mean, is there somebody who has that job? Are there people that have that job? I mean, or is it just like, well, maybe we need to assign someone because we haven't made this a priority?
Well, that's a really good question because nobody really at my college or district speaks to me. So it's really hard to get information. And I honestly don't know if they would even tell me the truth if they did. And they could simply say, yes, we have people on it. And I think in past articles, they have said, yes, we're working on that. But how do we know what they are working on?
Right.
We don't. There's no oversight and there's no transparency at all in this entire scam.
Yeah. As a reporter, one of the most frustrating times would be when there's an investigation, because it was just like the blanket, we don't have to tell you anything scenario, as it's under investigation. We can't give you this information or that because it's all under investigation. There's very little recourse you have as a member of the public. All right. Seeing as the scams are already occurring, can a bounty program be placed on finding fake, underperforming students that rewards the instructors for finding and identifying? And I'll tell you, if you want a reality show, get that guy Dog the Bounty Hunter if he's still around, and let me know, and we'll put it together, Kim. I'll host it live. But I don't know. That's one question about it. And you already kind of said what you think would help too, but just curious, any thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, it's usually best to reward people for good behavior than punish for bad in certain scenarios. I think, the rewards are for the schools right now, the couple colleges in the state who have actually done the hard work. They have morals, values, and ethics, and they said, we're not going to let fake students into our classes. And it hasn't been easy, but, it's a matter of personally going through, having employees go through each application and verify every single financial aid enrollment application and ensure that these people are real that are coming into the college. Mine's a little bit different. We're a 9-district school, or a 9-school district. Therefore, it makes it a little bit more difficult. But what's important here? Is it just letting all these fake students in our classes, or is it more about stopping it? There's definitely other states that are taking, the lead on this. Oklahoma is one. They're looking into some new legislation. Texas is another one. And actually, as a result of our first interview, when you had me on back a few months ago, a company called BioSig in Texas contacted me to basically consult with them. And they have technology that basically prevents this from occurring. And so there are things that can be done, but they're not being done. And when you ask why, as an investigative reporter, you've always, I'm sure we're told, follow the money. And that's what this is all about. And I think because people really don't see it coming out of their paycheck, they should, because we're all losing in this. We're losing because our taxpayer dollars are funding this. And prices are increasing everywhere. And it's going to cost us all in the end, despite the whole moral, issue in this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it just seems like everybody, not everybody, but like a lot of people, especially in the LA area, they all have like a cause they're trying to find more money for. And it seems like this would be a great place. Like I have a friend out there who does organizing for homeless housing. And, they want to pass a new law, I think, for like taxing people who are selling their house that's worth more than 5 million or something. Like there's always like a new thing, and we're going to tax this or tax that. And it's like, hey, here's, what did you say it was again? Like 670 million in one semester or 1 year or something. So
well, our governor just announced that we have a 97 billion with a B surplus in California. $97 billion surplus.
Really?
And it just blew my mind away when I heard that, because the amount of taxes we pay for zero results. Well, maybe they should put some of that away for a rainy day, or I don't know. How about give it back?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty big surplus to be hanging on to. That's just ripe for more corruption.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Man, I'm surprised they announced that. Maybe he was thinking that was going to be a pat on his back, and not realize how people were going to take it. Okay, perhaps Kim can address what should be done to stop the blatant corruption and why it isn't being done. I think we've addressed a lot of that, but do you have any other thoughts on it that you haven't shared yet?
A lot of times once you make an example of one or two people, then it kind of cuts down on that same behavior. I truly believe, I hope the investigation is being done. I hope that anybody that truly knew about this and continued to allow it to happen will be held criminally responsible. I'll keep my fingers crossed on that one. I think if you make example out of a couple of them, I think maybe we could start holding people accountable and maybe preventing it in the future.
It seems the schools in this country are just as corrupt as the government that rips us taxpayers off. Shocker. I'm a supporter of Adam and open the books. California has ignored all his legal forays into opening its checkbook. That's the guy who wrote the article that we first started with, in case people were wondering. Another shocker. You were interviewed by him. Any thoughts on his work or what they're talking about here, his efforts to try to expose some of this stuff and being shut down?
Again, it doesn't surprise me. We have a really big issue with transparency, and it just all goes back to the money. Why can't you be transparent? If you have nothing to hide, put it out there. The only reason not to open the books, I guess you could say, is because you're afraid of what people are going to see. And if you are doing nothing wrong, then just be transparent. And I think that's kind of where he really nails it on the head, is that, just open it up. Let's see what's going on out there. And you always have the opportunity to do the good deed, right? So even if you've done something bad in the past, you can change that behavior. So you know what? Admit you screwed up, and let's move forward and fix it. Let's look at some of the technology that's out there to fix it. We have a $97 billion surplus in California. I'm pretty sure it's not going to cost that much to fix the CCC apply system or any of the other colleges, security systems. So this is not brain surgery here. We're looking at basic morals and values and ethics.
I'm curious, from your experience, did did the average, I don't know, I mean, professor or administrator in the system, or do they, not did in past tense, since you're still there, at least as of today, we'll see, we'll see, right? Um, see themselves as a servant of the public good, I guess, or working for the, the director of blank, because I do think in my experience, you had people in government that really believed that like their responsibility was to the public outside the walls of the institution. But there were a lot of people who really believed, maybe they wouldn't have said this out loud, but their behavior certainly reflected it. They were working for the agenda of the person in charge. And so I think that's in some cases where the secrecy comes from, or where the semantic arguments and the politics and all that stuff, because they don't see themselves, I guess, as individuals all charged with work that really, ultimately is for the people outside of the institution. And I mean, inside too, but like the students, for instance, in your case. But it's offering a public service. It's not the same as working for a company, a private company, where you have a CEO, and when you're hired on, like, it's their way or the highway, right? And I just noticed there's sort of two different attitudes, and you really wondered sometimes, like, who are we, who's our boss really here? Is it are we supposed to be just doing what this person says because they're in charge, or this is the culture of the institution, or do we need to rethink the way we see ourselves as servants of the public good?
No, I agree with you. And the unfortunate thing is the students who we were hired to serve. I mean, that we were hired to educate at a community college level, which is a stepping stone for many, many students. Not everybody jumps into a 4-year, university. And these community colleges, they're so important, such an integral part of helping students transition from high school to even higher education. And that's who we are there to serve. And they are the ones who are losing out, unfortunately. They can't get classes, or they're in a class, and because there's so many fake students, the class gets canceled when all the fake students are dropped. So that is really the unfortunate aspect of it, because that's truly what this is all about. This is about the students who we were hired to educate. You didn't hire me to do 90% paperwork. You didn't hire me to find fake students. You hired me to educate, and they're basically taking that option out of it. And it's truly unfortunate for the communities that we serve.
Okay, one last quick question. Did you really expect them to give up money by being honest?
Well, that's unfortunate. I grew up with having what I would like to believe are good morals, values, and ethics, and that's how I've tried to live my life. And um, that's kind of what propelled me to speak out about this, because when I notified them what was going on, it wasn't taken seriously. And it's been kind of that huge uphill struggle from there. And so I would like to say, yeah, I expect them to stop, but I don't know what it's going to take to get them to stop and be transparent and basically fix what's going on.
Any further thoughts, Kim, before we go? I appreciate your taking the time to come back on and give us an update.
No, but I wanted to thank you again for having me back on for an update and your very first request for my interview. Really appreciate that, and I hope I maybe doing more interviews, or maybe I can find somebody. I just need that one right person that this issue hits them, that they can take it on, and they have the ability to take it on and make it their what they're looking for, and holding people accountable. So that's my hope, and
Is
hopefully
that like Is that somebody in law enforcement or government administration? What kind of person would that be?
Good question. Not, we the politicians are kind of that love-hate relationship,
Oh,
it's
right.
part of our
Okay. Somebody.
country.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping somebody with enough power to basically come in and pull the plug, on this whole scam,
Hmm.
whoever that may be, whether it's somebody, in higher up in a law enforcement agency that has the ability or the power to direct people to do that, or if it happens to be a politician, if it happens to be somebody from the Department of Justice, um, you know, anybody that's willing to do that.
You all have some interesting people running for office there in California this year, so I don't know, we'll see what happens. Some of them have been on the channel, so if they win, I'll connect you all and you can see what you can do with it. Kim Rich, thanks so much again. If you watch this video on Rumble, don't forget to join my locals community. It's super easy. Check out that red join button at the top of the screen and then click on support, and that'll give you access and the ability to chat during my weekly exclusive editorial board meetings. I have them out in the barn with my horses. You can give me feedback from the week before, story ideas for the week ahead. You can tell me how your life's going and what you wish I was doing or not doing. It's a great way to connect, and like I said, it's exclusive to locals. You can also put in questions ahead of time for interviews. So join my locals community. It really is one of the main ways that I'm able to continue doing this work. So thank you to everybody who's already on locals, and I will see you over there.